Welcome back to another episode of The Apex. I'm Archie, and today I have the pleasure of chatting to Tim Layzell, who is one of the world's leading automotive artists. Now, Tim's work is often exhibited at highly prestigious events like the Goodwood Festival of Speed, the Revival, and the Monaco Grand Prix, and at Pebble Beach in California, where his work always proves to be extremely popular. And alongside painting cars, he also loves to race them as well, and he's currently the proud owner of a rather lovely 1965 BMW 1800. So without further ado, let's go and have a chat. Tim, thank you very much for letting us come down and check out your art studio. It's rather lovely in here. Yeah, and obviously we had a catch up at Revival where you were supposed to be racing yours at 1965 BMW 1800 with Christian Horner, but didn't quite get a plan.
No, still a sore subject. Don't like to talk about it. We were. I've raced at Goodwood a few times, but the BMW was lined up for the St Mary's Trophy, two-driver race. So we had Christian lined up, who'd not actually tested the car. We tested it the week before. Was going well, although the diff did go. To be fair, we broke the diff. We had to borrow one back because the car's so rare. There's only about sort of 10, 15 racing in the world. So we just couldn't get the parts for the diff. So we had to borrow one from a very nice chap. Yeah. And then all was going well. And then warming up the car on the Friday and then just a huge plume of smoke. So very disappointing when you put in so much effort to get everything ready. You know, we've done loads of prep on the car. I think, sometimes obviously people don't do prep, turn up, something goes wrong, and that's just a bit stupid. Yeah. But we'd done a lot, and to say it's a bit gutted. It's a first world problem, obviously, but it was a case of just headbutt the car a few times, and and we actually handed over the place straight away to someone with a Mini. They had a car in reserve, so Christian drove that throughout the weekend. So at least he got a drive, and so that was good. And to be honest, it wasn't the only action we had that weekend because my daughter was in the pedal car race as well. So actually, that put the focus back on her. So
how did she get on?
She got on well. Yes, no, she took it very seriously. Actually, she's quite funny. My son's done it for a couple of years, and she's done it. That's her second year. It's a loaned car. Which a very kind family sort of let our kids do it. So they're almost pro drivers, really, racing someone. But she was quite funny. She was particular about who takes them out because you've got to set the wheels right. Like when they go and start up. And she was just checking that. I think my wife did one, and she's like, can you do the wheels right? And she got quite serious. But bless her, she did quite well. So it was good. Yeah. It was great fun. I mean, it's very serious actually. The Custodian Cup, because the regs are quite serious. They scrutiny them and they measure the cars and the pedal distance of the pedals and things like that. So actually, the driver's briefing's even more full on for that than the main thing. So it's quite funny, really. It's very sweet.
Yeah, and obviously at Goodwood you also had your art on display as well. Yeah. And I was having a sort of look around it, as were lots of other people, and it seemed to me you've got sort of two distinct styles. You have this sort of pop art, and then this sort of is it super realism? Is that
kind of more realism? It? Yeah, I mean, I probably have about three different styles actually. I've always done the sort of more realist thing, but obviously that's developed over years. Okay. I mean, I've been painting really since 1995. So very cheesily, I won a competition run by the British Racing Drivers Club. In 95, so it's for artists age under 23, and I was 13 when I won it, and exhibited at the Old Coys Festival at Silverstone, which is now Silverstone Classic, or whatever it's called now, the Classic. And so that sort of kickstarted my career, and I kind of always painted in that style, albeit it was a bit more crude. I've developed that over the years, so I've always done that. But that's kind of, I now do about sort of half and half. I do a pop art style, which again, though, I've been doing for like 20 years now. Okay. That time seems to have whizzed by. And that's a style which I experimented with at school. So I studied like futurism and pop art and things. and it's it sort of developed from there, really. I did a Christmas card for Fiskins, and then I got a commission from someone else. And he's I think Gregor said at the time, he's like, have you done anything a bit different? And I was like, well, I have actually. I'll give that a go. But I did it at school.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll do that again. And then it was really cool. It was really, it was quite a cool picture.
Yeah.
And then did another, and then that got featured in lots of magazines and things and newspapers.
Yeah.
And that sort of kick-started that style.
Okay.
And I think that's quite a mix of quite a lot of different things. I mean, my wife, she's a medical student, and when she was living in her student house with her friends, they were all experimented with painting pop art pictures.
Okay.
And one of the bars we used to go and have like the Liechtenstein paintings with like the fighter planes, like the POW kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, hang on a minute, well, I could do that with cars. And so and then I also liked it's like George Ham, which was like pre-war Monaco posters and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I quite like the railway art of the 1950s. So I kind of culminated everything together. Yeah. And I thought, well, that would be really cool if I could generate speed, but in a really simple style.
Right.
And that's kind of where this kind of style has sort of led to. I mean, this is like the ultimate sort of development of it, whereby there is a bit more detail these days. When I started it was much more sort of basic.
Yeah. Because
I try and pare everything down as much as possible and put the least detail the better in a way. But that is quite hard to do. So it's more a case of what do you take out? Because obviously I can do the realist sort of style where I put loads in, loads of details. This is more a case of like, what can I leave out but still retain the speed? And also the detail, because I think what a lot of people like is the shapes of the cars. Obviously, you've got to get that right. But not only that, you've got to get the handling characteristics right. So the lean on the wheels, the angle, is it braking, is it accelerating, is it drifting, or is it just doing four-wheel drift? And so I think that's really important to get that right. And that's obviously what I spend a lot of time doing. And although they look simple, they actually take longer than...
They don't look that simple.
Well, they have that more simplistic look. But compared to, say, like this one, which is a realist, that's lots of, I would say, just dots and dabs and bits and bobs. But they do take around the same time. But this is quite a stressful thing because you're trying to make it simple and it has to be really neat. And so until it ends up neat, it can look quite crap. For want of a better phrase, you just and that creates quite a tension because you're like, oh, is that going to work?
It's not committed to it.
Exactly. So it's an exciting style because you can play around quite a lot with it, and obviously with this one particularly, I've sort of bled the lights out behind the car and things like that, and you can really sort of go a bit more interesting with colour and. But the temptation is to go back into detail. Obviously, this is a poster for Pebble Beach. And so they sort of like having the event in the background. And that is sort of coming down to the show field. I've probably, the hill isn't quite that steep, let's say. But obviously, you're trying to convey, it's a poster at the end of the day. So you're trying to convey that kind of. And the cool thing about that one, actually, I mean, for a start, the cars are amazing. You've got the Lancia Stratos Zero and then the Aston Martin Bulldog. I mean, the Zero that's like 50-year-old. That car is 1970, and it still looks quite modern. It's quite strange. I mean, the Bulldog, they're both sort of revolutionary, kind of really space age kind of cars. But obviously it looks 70s, but in a way, like it almost hasn't aged in a funny kind of way. Like it's still fresh. You see it and you go, wow, really cool. Like the rear lights and things and the wheels and. Very cool car. And I think what's quite cool about that particular poster for Pebble is that for them, Pebble Beach, they have everything from sort of from sort of 20s kind of cars. And there's been a core of 50s and 60s cars. And I feel like they're trying to go a bit more modern now, which is exciting. Because I think where the whole classic car thing is moving to the 90s and things. So they have the BPR cars, the McLaren F1s, XJ220s and things. So that's kind of a nod to the fact that the future's arriving at Pebble Beach, if you like. So
nice.
you kind of,
yeah.
That's, I haven't got the McLaren F1s and things in there, but, I think everyone can kind of feel that kind of changing a little bit, and everything's sort of moving a bit more 70s, 80s, 90s. There's still, obviously, I love 50s and 60s cars, but, there's definitely a sort of momentum, isn't there, I think, to move forward a bit. So I think they're sensing that, and there was a bit of a leap of faith, and which is really exciting. I think it's really successful.
Yeah. As well, I was just looking at some of these pictures. I'm very amateur, dabble in photography as well, and obviously in photography you have the sort of rule of thirds. Is that something that applies to? Because I'm just looking at some of the. If I was to imagine the rule of thirds on that painting, you kind of got the cars on that sort of bottom line. Is that something that, or it doesn't really apply much to?
Yeah, I don't really like having anything too central.
Okay.
Obviously, you've got to bear in mind, there's sort of slightly complicated thing with painting something like that is that, the original painting's sort of there.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have to make room for the script to go above. The spacing of that painting is slightly different to some of the others.
Okay.
But the GTO there, the GTO is right in the bottom third probably. And I quite like having that sparse space. Yeah. If I was braver, I'd probably leave even more space. But again, it's about what you strip down and things like that. There's certain tricks of the trade I use for different paintings. Again, in the realist sort of style, I tend to have a shadow along the bottom, and that's to make you feel like you're looking into it, and so that creates a feeling of depth. Because ultimately it's a flat canvas, and so all the time you're trying to create a depth. And there's lots of, obviously the hills and things get paler and paler as they go back. Which we all notice, hopefully, as we're walking around, go for a walk or something like that. But there's all those kind of things that I use. I'm self-taught really. I painted at school. My school hated me doing cars really, because I was always into cars as a kid, and my dad was he's always had TVRs. I've had quite a few TVRs as a result, but we used to go and watch lots of vintage sports car club events from little, and then I'd come back and draw Bugattis and things like that. So he sort of helped me early on with sort of the painting and stuff. But at school they kind of, I did paint cars, but obviously, as you can see, I paint loads of other stuff. I paint people and landscapes, predominantly things like that. That painting, they are a landscape with a car in it. So for me, that's really important to create a picture. So in a way, I kind of never really got the fact they didn't like me painting cars, because they're really hard as well, actually. I'm not bigging myself up, but they are quite hard. They're hard if you want to make them look real and look like they're moving in a certain way. And that's sort of what I've built up over sort of 30 years really, is sort of suspension movements and stuff like that. And I think, my art teachers were not, they just didn't really, I may have been a muppet at school. I was frustrating probably to teach at school. I didn't particularly get on with the whole experience, but I did like doing cars. And when I left school after A-levels, I just started doing it as a full-time job, because I'd already started sort of, as I say, at age 13. So I was sort of doing it when people were doing their GCSE research. I remember I had my first exhibition at Goodwood Festival Speed, I think when I was 15. So I was still a year before GCSEs. And I remember finishing school and then trying to get some stuff finished to have an exhibition. And so it was always that challenge, but essentially self-taught. So all the kind of things I'm sort of talking about, maybe they would have taught me at art school. I don't know. But I've kind of picked it up.
It's quite impressive. I love the fact that it is self-taught, and it's not follow these rules and you get this result. It's kind of an
well, it might have been easier.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily.
There's two ways of looking at it. You could say, well, then I might have been a bit more generic.
Exactly.
But then it might have shortcutted things that's taken me years to realise. So, nowadays, I guess you've got YouTube, and you could probably just YouTube it and just say, well, how do I do that? most of the time when you're at the easel is it's problem solving. You're kind of like, oh, how should I do that? How, and sometimes when I'm on a mega deadline, I work really quickly, and it just speeds up your decisions. That's ultimately what it is, because you're like, well, I've got to try that. If I don't try it, I'm not gonna get this done. So you just try stuff. If it doesn't work, I mean, the good thing with acrylics, you can just paint over it to a degree. Like obviously you can't slap the paint on because then you'll see it through. So you got to be a bit tentative, but ultimately you're trying stuff all the time, and then you can. Particularly like with styles like that, you kind of like, how complex do I make the trees? I couldn't make them so complex that you couldn't then see the writing over the top and things like that. So you're always kind of, and then you don't want to detract from the car, and it's all a bit of a, you're sort of winging it a bit to a degree. Obviously, I'm not really, winging it's wrong now, because like obviously I don't ever throw a painting away now. But like I don't really have any failed attempts, and I haven't for like 15, 20 years, because I'd spend a long time thinking about how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I guess I've got a good recipe that I sort of know works, and it's complicated within that to experiment. You're obviously trying to experiment, but you don't want to experiment so much necessarily that it fails. Like if you haven't got time, that's the slightly complex thing. I have a really long waiting list. I have like a sort of 18 months to 2 year waiting list for commissions, which is amazing. But then I suppose that I don't experiment quite as much as I would if I didn't have any waiting list. You could go a bit more bonkers with it. But it's a tricky balance, that, because I know things are going to be seen again, like they're going to be featured in magazines or books and things. So it's more that I'm going to see it, and it's going to bug me when I know it's not right. So I work really hard to make sure it's right. Everything I do, I would never churn anything out now in like a wild rush and say, right, that'll do. Like, unfortunately people do have to wait, because it is a creative, I haven't got, nowadays I think, I haven't got a computer behind me sort of saying, oh, well, we'll solve that problem behind a computer program. It's not, still I think quite a lot of people think, I get asked, oh, what program do you use? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like, it's completely just from draft to, when I start something like that, it's quite scrappy, and then you just build it up and up. It's not like the like it's drawn out and then I fill it in. So it's really different. I think that's where people maybe, I don't know how other people view it, but if I see something like that's computer generated, it's a bit like car design. You can see something that's been drawn on a computer compared to a 1950s, 60s Ferrari, where it's been penned and made by hand, because it's different to the one next to it. And I think you can see that in a painting. And I think we're at a crossroads in car design, and well, it's sort of gone over the crossroads of car design, but certainly in paintings, where obviously there's a lot of stuff on computers, like done on computers now, which looks, is tidy, but it's sort of, no disrespect incidentally to people that do that. It's a skill. I can't use a computer like that, but it's a different kind of, it's not organic, like in the same way, you kind of, these are built up and you're just constantly molding it. So I think sometimes people that are maybe even collecting art and things like that I think some people really appreciate it. But other people, maybe if you're just doing it, you kind of like, oh, I quite like that picture, I quite like that picture. Maybe don't see the difference. They're like chalk and cheese. They're like two very different things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
That's quite a challenge. I think that's quite a challenge going forward, sort of to differentiate that. I mean, that's the thing with the style, actually, is that quite a lot of people have sort of used my sort of style, sort of, which, as some people say, is quite flattering, but it's quite frustrating as well, especially if people then think it's my style. It's not. It's like, well, no, I wouldn't have done it like that. And I can see it, but maybe if you were casually looking at it, you might not see it.
Yes, I can see, imitation, best form of flattery, but I can see the downsides of that as well. But I suppose the process as well behind going about painting something like that, you don't just get the canvas and start putting the paint on, right? How does that sort of process work?
Yeah, so I mean, it differs depending on what kind of picture it is. If it's something like the Pebble Beach posters, they come to me with the sort of cars that they obviously are featuring at the event.
Yeah.
Then we talk to the owners, and then we go through some ideas, and I then kind of I come up with some draft drawings. And then we go from there. And I usually do quite a few different options. Sometimes like, something really leaps out and I might do one. And then it's like, I've looked at quite a lot of different angles and this, that and the other, but I'm pretty sure that is what we want to do.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you nail it. Sometimes you kind of think, well, actually, we could do that, we can move it here, we can move it there. And so these ones are a bit more planned out. These sort of more kind of realist style ones, or if I'm doing something for an exhibition and I'm just painting something to sell, I don't generally do so many preliminary sketches or anything like that. I kind of do just go for it a bit more.
Yeah.
So it's quite different. But if someone commissions something, then generally I research it endlessly, and which is where a lot of the time goes actually. Just sort of loads of different angles of the car. I might go to see the car sometimes, or people might send me the photographs. But it's generally better if I can go and see the car. Note to self: if anyone wants a racing car painted, it's better if I race it first. But
of course,
yeah, no, it's not. I really need to be more demanding. But no. So then I do sort of sketches. And then I go from there, and then it just goes to canvas. But even then, like it can change a bit. Where I sort of say, well, actually, we can. These are kind of like these kind of lines are like moving all the time. I might have started, further over, and then I just kind of like, well, actually, it's going to look better if we do that. And so it's a constantly moving process. Which oddly, and I've still not come to the answer this. One of our friends was saying, why is it a painting and not a painted? But I presume that is because it's constantly evolving and it's never really finished kind of thing. Like, I don't know, maybe that's it. Someone may have the answer for that, but that's kind of my interpretation.
I suppose it's quite tricky as well if you're doing like really old historical stuff. The deep dive that's required, actually finding the information, the library of books you must have, and the photos you're.
So I've got a lot of books, and I've just built up sort of loads of sort of saved images and things over the years, just researching, because ultimately historical accuracy is like really important for me. Again, slightly different at the Pebble Beach stuff, but most of my work is sort of motorsport art, and say like Targa Florio. In the early 60s. Obviously, most of the material is black and white for a start. So a lot of research needs to go into the colour. You get quite good at sort of interpreting what colour that probably was, just from the tone and things. But then if you can find colour, then it's like gold dust. But that's essentially what I'm doing, certainly with painters like the GTO one. That image does not exist until I've painted it. So it's not like I'm not painting something that already exists. I'm creating a new image. Like sometimes you get photographers featured from like 50s and 60s where they've discovered new collections and things. And that's kind of what I kind of try and do is just produce something that nobody's ever seen before of that, of a famous race or a famous car, and but then bring colour to it, which again, there won't be much of. And that's really exciting when you see a colour 1950s photograph or 60s photograph. You're like, wow, I haven't seen that before. And that's kind of what I try and do. And obviously in the light that I use, I don't ever paint really sort of neutral light. I really like dramatic shadows and brightness and depth. Well, for a start, it creates depth, but also people want warmth really on their wall. Like I do paint wet racing scenes and things. Because that's that is cool. But people like to be happy. You're always happier on a day with a blue sky. And a lot of people like my blue skies, and I just kind of think, well, that's what you want. Like you want to be there, you want to be happy. So I kind of do that.
And so how long does a painting take? You mentioned earlier they're both, even both styles, are quite similar time frame. What is that?
I mean, It really depends where you draw the line, really. I mean, just the research can take ages. I mean, like I say, I have a long waiting list, but even at the start of the waiting list, people put their name down. I'll start researching it quite early.
Okay.
And then just gradually build that up and up to the sketches. And I'm very lucky people are patient with me. It's good. I mean, that in itself is complex. You know, I am a one-man band. Like, I can't farm that out. Obviously, Damien Hirst and people do, but you know, it's not like, I think people sometimes forget that as well. That
it's not a mechanical process.
It's not a mechanical process. So, I mean, people obviously get frustrated waiting for cars to be restored, but they can take ages because ultimately that is a bit of an art form sometimes. But this really is an art form, like in the truest sense. So, you know, I do work. I don't work like your sort of typical, I guess, artist in that I get up really early. So I wake up like at 5 probably and then start painting. You know, it's not unusual for me to be painting by 5 or half 5 in the morning. So I do work really hard. You know, coming up to exhibitions, I'll be working till like 3 a.m. in the morning and then starting again at 6 or sort of thing. Wow. So I will do a lot of hours when I need to, but obviously you can't sustain that all the time. Otherwise I'd be dead quite quickly, I think. So it's complicated with kids because I like walking my kids to school and things like that. And also just like when you're working on your own, I need to exercise a lot, otherwise you just go mad. Yeah. So I cycle and I run, I surf if I can. Like we go to Cornwall a lot, so I surf. So you need a certain amount of time out to be able to achieve it. It's not like, I don't want to like do anyone else's job down, but it's not like, you know, you can sit in the chair and I can do it start to finish sometimes. But it doesn't really work like that. You just, you know, usually it's, you know, do it over a few weeks and or, you know, months sometimes. Because I generally paint a bit on one picture and a bit on another. And you dabble. Because like I say, like, you know, you're learning all the time. So I'll go from style to style. So I'll do pop art, then realist, and then I was just going to say with the style, in between that, there's kind of almost like a poster art kind of thing that's slightly different, where it's like sort of almost like in a poster style, but sort of doesn't have quite the same speed kind of thing. So, and I should just say the principle of the post of pop art and poster, the true difference is the fact that the colours in a pop art one or a poster one are not blended. So they're mixed. So you mix all the colours, but across the shades of the car, they're solid shades. So there are no kind of like, they were on some of my first ones, but essentially, like, the sky colour is one colour. Yeah. And then if you want to break, then I need a line between it. So, like, with the car colour, fortunately, there's loads of lines on that car, so quite crisp lines, so it breaks it up. But essentially, nothing, like, none of the shadow is getting lighter towards the top. That is a block. That's a block colour. Whereas, obviously, on the realist style, you know, it goes everywhere. So you've got loads of different shades, and you can blend it. So that's why you have to be really selective with that style, and it kind of. That's what's time consuming, because you know even just that orange, you know, there's probably, I might have 9 different colors in that color, like mixed up, and then a varying different blend. You know, I might do it, and of course with acrylic, they're acrylic on canvas. In oil, I don't think that would be possible, that style, because it would just take too long to dry, and then you'd be smudging it all the time. So they dry really quickly in acrylic. Otherwise, it would take you just so long to do. Yeah. But they dry lighter than they do when they're mixed. So when they're mixed, they're much lighter. So you have to kind of predict where the colour's going to end up. Yeah. And so once I've mixed the colours, I keep them potted up. Actually, and they last sometimes a couple of months.
Did you speak to Daniel Arshan when you were at Revival by any chance? Because he's a visual artist. I don't know if you're familiar with this one.
I didn't actually. No, I saw they were there.
Because he did the livery on that.
That's right. Yes,
for the Ikazawa.
That's right.
Yeah, you ever thought about doing an art car?
I have, and
because Warhol did one, didn't he? He did one.
I have thought about doing it. Quite a few people have asked me, and for whatever reason, I've just not got around to doing it. Okay. I did kind of think, oh, should I paint my own car and race at the Revival and do it as an art car? That might be quite cool.
Yeah.
But I haven't done it yet. I paint all my own numbers on. So like my race numbers and roundels and things are all painted on. I haven't got as far as doing the whole thing. I'm a big believer in painting your numbers on because I always get frustrated, not to go off on a tangent too much, but I get frustrated by really, really nice cars. And I mean really nice cars, like, you know, multi-million-pound Ferraris and whatever else. And then they've just got sticker numbers on. And you just think, don't do that. And, you know, obviously it's that car. They can do what they want. But it just does, you know, it can look so much better. You know, like the Mina Media, when they used to paint the numbers on. I mean, those guys were obviously like, they were talented, but they were obviously doing a lot. So they kind of got into the swing of it. But they were fantastic. But that just looked so much better. So I always paint numbers on the car because I just think it looks so much cooler than just like a sticker, which you might have stuck on like a Vauxhall Nova at like, you know, a track day or something like that. And you just think, not to, you know, I quite like Vauxhall Novas actually. But you know what I mean? Yeah. So I kind of think, well, you've got like a multi-million-pound car and you've done that. Like, it seems a bit strange. But there you go.
Yeah. But I suppose talking of race cars, you have raced quite a bit as well. Was it TVRs was kind of where you? Yeah.
So I was racing, Grand Tourer, and I've raced that quite a few times at Goodwood. Over the last few years. Sadly, I've sold that now. Stupidly, I shouldn't have sold it.
The regret in the voice.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, I try not to think about that. But that was a really cool car. I mean, that had raced quite a bit at Goodwood in period, and then Nürburgring and Spa and things. Well, I mean, to be honest, it'd done so many races in period. Really, really impressive. Silverstone 6 hour and things. And then I bought it, and we raced quite a few times. We did like the Speed Week in lockdown, which was actually I was talking about it with a friend recently who also raced there that week, and strangely, and it's going to annoy sort of people, spectators, but that was one of the best race meetings we've ever been to. Obviously, there were no spectators because it was in lockdown essentially, or just out of lockdown, a semi-lockdown, whatever it was, and the event couldn't have anyone there. And I guess it probably made a difference that we've been locked up essentially for a long time. The sort of first time you're sort of seeing people. But it was just incredible. Like you were there and you're just like, you're pinching yourself that we're at Goodwood and we're racing. And, you know, obviously everyone had to keep the distance and they managed that really well. But it was just incredible. Like I did two races that weekend. And we shared the BMW with Reno Franchetti. Okay. And then I shared the TVR with Richard Meaden, Dickie Meaden. We finished like 10th or 11th. You know, this is the Moss Trophy. And it's really poignant because Sterling had died not long before, so it was a sort of tribute race to him. And that was quite amazing because I'd met him a lot. And I painted him obviously a lot over the years.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'd met him many times and things. And so that was really amazing to be in that race anyway. But we were in the little TVR, which is only an 1800 engine, obviously a bit lighter, but we were in against all the Ferrari short wheelbases, E-types, DB4 GTs, and so like fast stuff. And I think we finished 10th or 11th, and which is pretty impressive against all the E-types and things. So we beat a lot of heavy, like big machinery sort of thing.
Well, I think to finish up, I was going to ask you some quick fire questions, and I feel like this one's going to be like choosing your children. But what's your favourite painting that you've done?
Oh, that is a complicated one. I don't know. I did a really cool one of two Ferrari Formula One cars coming out of onto the seafront in Monaco years ago. It's called State of the Nations. There's a really nice chap called Mark who owns it in Devon. And he's got a few paintings. And I've told him before that's one of my favourite paintings. I don't know why. It's Mike Hawthorne and I think Luigi Musso. They're sort of coming out in a bit of a power drift. It's in the realist style, actually.
Okay.
But I just quite like the light across the bay because it looks across the bay at Monaco,
Lovely.
south of France, and the light's quite cool on it. And I really like, going back to inspiration, I really like Edward Hopper, all the light and shade of him. But yeah, so probably that.
Yeah.
But various different like pop art ones.
Yeah.
Like I say, I don't really paint anything that I wouldn't like anymore. You know, I might have when I was a teenager, but and it's funny. I know I'm supposed to do quick fire answers, but people say to me like, "Oh, what's it like selling it? Do you get really sad selling it?" I'm like, "Well, that is my job." Like, and it's been my job. You know, I only had one job after I left school. I had a job at Gap clothing company, like folding clothes. So I'm really good at folding clothes. But I was only working there for like 2 months. And then I'd be doing sketches because I was like near the changing rooms. I'd do some sketches or some press ups and stuff, like while there was no one there. And then I got the sack in the end because I kind of got the sack. We parted ways because they were always like, you know, you've got to help people more. And I said, well, I'll ask them if they want help. I'm not going to do any more than that. Anyway, and so other than that, for 2 months, painting has been my only job. So, you know, obviously everything I paint to sell. There are some things like, I would like on my wall. And you know, when if they came back, then I'd be like, yeah, that's really cool to have on the wall. But ultimately, you know, that is my job. You know, so gotta sell them, really.
And if you could only paint cars from one automotive manufacturer, which marque would you go for?
Well, this is complicated because obviously I have done things for manufacturers, and I may do in the future.
Okay, I'm putting in a tight spot there. But
they're all great guys.
Yeah, they're all great. Yeah.
They're all great guys. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do paint. I paint quite a lot of Porsches, just because there's so many people that love Porsches. But I find, you know, their race history is really cool. Yeah. Sort of certainly from the sort of mid to late 60s to through 70s and 80s, and the liveries are quite cool as well. So they are cool. I mean, I started out really liking sort of pre-war stuff, Bugattis and ERAs and things like that. Yeah. And then I got into like 50s, like Maserati 250Fs and then I suppose ultimately Ferraris, really. I just love 1950s, 60s Ferraris and then 70s Ferraris. I usually end up painting more sports and GT cars. I don't know why that is. I guess that's because I like the shape. Maybe.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
And it also goes with drivers, you know. I really love painting Fangio, Jim Clark and people like that. And then Pedro Rodriguez, like in Porsche 917s and stuff like that. So I'm kind of sometimes I'm led by that, or the great races and and it's a slight cliche. This is a long answer to your question. This is a complaint my kids have when they ask me a school question. They're like, "Dad, we haven't got time. Short answer, a long answer." My son had a homework yesterday that he's got to learn. He's got to interview, ask someone the meaning of life. And they were like, "Don't ask Dad. Don't ask Dad." But it's a cliche. But like a 250 GTO, is sort of like, is amazing. Not because it's worth the most money now. That's irrelevant to me. It's what they did in period. They were raced and crashed and smashed. So many. If you look at the Tour de France, for example, as a race, they raced and literally the fronts were hanging off the cars. Literally, like there's nothing left of them. Headlights hanging out. And so for me, like that's sort of what I was talking about with the TVR, where it's not got the original. Didn't have the original chassis, but that doesn't matter as long as it's traceable. Yeah. That's more exciting than a low mileage unused vehicle to me because it's got a story to it. It's been smashed, but that's cool. It was smashed by a really famous driver on a really famous race in like the golden era of motorsport. Yeah. Like what's cooler than that? Who cares if it's original? If it's original and it's like unused from new, then what's cool about that other than the fact it came out of the factory? And that's just not exciting in the same way. So I guess like the stories behind all the pictures are what I find fascinating. So that's your long answer.
No, that's fine.
I could go on more.
And final question, what is in your dream 3-car garage if you had to have?
Oh God, I should have thought about this.
Always catches people out.
Well, I drive, my daily is a van. It's a transporter van. Now, it's very cliche because I surf a lot. And people say, oh, you've got it because you surf. But joking aside, I'm not sure I could cope without a van anymore.
No,
I do surf, and it is a cliche, but it's a cliche because it works. Like, I can't, you see people like struggling to put a surfboard on top of a car. Or like I cycle a lot, so I take my bikes and stuff. And you just think, like, people like struggling with a bike rack, and with a van, you just throw it in. You throw it in, and you're away. And so I think, like, money, like, no object. I probably would have a GTO, Ferrari GTO 250. But it would definitely not stay in the garage. So the unfortunate, like, downside, the fact that they're so valuable, people just don't use them quite the same way. But the coolest thing for me would be to have a GTO, drive it to the track, race it, hopefully don't smash it up too much, and then drive it home. And just use it all the time. So I wouldn't want one and then you put it in a glass cage and then you just don't use it, because that, for me, that wouldn't appeal. So it'd have to be something you use all the time and just don't worry about denting it, and that would be really cool. So probably one of those on those conditions, so that people didn't mistakenly think I bought it just because it's expensive. I wanted to use. And then, I don't know. I should have thought more about those. I guess, I do like, sort of 50s sports cars. So like a Maserati 300S or a Lister Jaguar. Something like that. Or a D-type Jaguar. We used to drive up to Silverstone, really like famous sort of road through Chipping Norton and up through Burford, and on the way to sort of past Jeremy Clarkson's farm. I can't remember what that's called. Diddley Squat. So up through there, really amazing roads. And I used to dream of, like, oh my God, how cool would this be? Like in a Maserati 300S or something like that. So I'd quite like something like that. And then excluding the van. So this is technically poor, but let's exclude the van because it doesn't really count. I think something pre-war. Like I used to have like a vintage Riley. Which I used to do off-road trials on, but like if you've never driven like or been in a vintage car, obviously they're crazy, but it feels like you're doing 100 when you're doing 20. So I'd quite like a Bugatti Type 51 or something like that. I'm aware that, like, obviously the van is technically the fourth car, but otherwise I'm going to have to pick up, like, do all like the DIY jobs in a GTO, because everything else is not very practical. So
you're not getting a
so any removals I'm going to have to help with. I'm going to have to use the GTO, put a roof rack on.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for taking the time. And I suppose where can people sort of find out more if they want to sort of?
So my website, timlayzell.com, or you can find me on Instagram. Which I think I'm Tim Layzell. I'm not. I'm like, I need to get better at social media. But
it's a whole.
I'm kind of, and I'm kind of, I'm a bit old school with that. I think. I think I'm not quite. I'm not made for that.
Cool. Well, Tim, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this little insight into Tim's world of art and cars. If you did, please drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to check out Custodian as well for your car-related needs, whether that's insurance or you're looking to buy a new car, or you're just looking to manage the ownership of your current cars. I'll leave all the links down below in the description. And as always, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.